Hello, I'm so glad you're here. This is Jennifer McGuire, and Happy New Year. I hope you had a blessed holiday season and are ready for a fresh start here in 2023. So today I am sharing with you a little look into how I organize projects. I spend a lot of time organizing behind the scenes, which helps me to create more and get more done with the supplies that I have. So I'm going to share a few of those tips with you today. Now, I have some different types of cards to share with you also. Some of them have die cutting and some of them have stitching. But all in all, this is really about how I kind of organize things, plan for what I'm going to do, and then get crafting. All right, let's look at the products I'm going to use today. You can skip ahead if you prefer. I am using some new Spellbinders Clubs. I get a lot of questions about Spellbinders Clubs. These are products that they come out with every month and you can subscribe to get them. There are different products you can subscribe to. You can pick and choose which ones you would want to receive. Or they have a big kind of I want it all bundle that you can sign up for and get every month. And it is a super discounted price. A lot of people ask me what kits or things I recommend subscribing to. Spellbinders is definitely at the top of the list because of the value and the consistently really good designs that they have month after month. Another great thing is you can cancel at any time, and there are some benefits that you get, some like extra perks that you can get by being a subscriber. Now, in 2023, they are making some changes, and I will put a link below where you can find out about all the different clubs or subscriptions they have. And I don't have them all here in the screen. I know they do have a card kit that you can sign up for. I don't have that here, but I'm going to show you the ones that I usually reach for. These are the January 2023 clubs. So this is what you would get if you subscribed for the different things. I'll show you some of them, and I'll be using them today as I describe to you how I kind of plan out making cards. Now here you can see is the Glimmer of the Month. I'm not using that today, but it has the hot foil glimmer and dies. Here is the Stamp of the Month, and you have the coordinating die. I'm not using that today either. I just wanted to show you that those are some of the subscription options. Next, we have the Die of the Month Club. So this is what you would get for January 2023. I really like the style of this. I'll use it later on. And I like that there are dies there that actually cut the words for a really cool, subtle effect, which you'll see in a bit. I always like the Die of the Month. Another that I always like is the large Die of the Month. So this is a different subscription than the regular Die of the Month. So there are two different sizes. Look at all of the dies included in here. It's got a great price. These are often dies that work really well together to create layered scenes. Always very well thought out, and they change it up every month. Now, in the past, they've had an embossing folder of the month, which is over there on the left. Now they have the 3D embossing folder of the month also. So the one on the left is regular. The one on the right is the 3D version. I like their embossing folders because they're big, so you can even use them on a slimline or 5x7 card. I'll demonstrate those later. And new this year is the Stitching Die of the Month, which I am so over the top excited about because I love stitching on my cards. This is what you would get for this year. You'll see this in action in a moment. There is also a stamp set that works really well with stitch cards or non-stitch cards, and that is available as an add-on. You can see it over there on the left. Now I've taken all of my dies and put them in storage pockets here, but you can see all of those dies are included with the Stitching Die of the Month, which is a great value. Again, I don't work for Spellbinders. I just think they have great products, great customer service, and a great value. And notice here, there are many different ways you can use these dies together or separately, so you can get different looks from one set, which really adds to the value of it and how many times you can use it for different style of cards. I just wanted to explain why I use these products often and why I recommend them, but everybody has a different style. There are a lot of great kit or subscription kind of options out there. This just happens to be one that I think has a lot to offer. Okay, on to the point of this video, and that is how I kind of organize my card planning. When I get a product, I will pull some products together with it so I can start to plan and have it ready to go when I do have time to craft. First, I'll show you how I planned out some stitching cards to do on the go. Then after that, I'll show you how I did some planning with some die cutting cards. But really, these kind of ideas of organizing so you're ready to create whenever you have time works with whatever type of products you want. First up, I have some cards planned that I thought I'd show you using the new Spellbinders Stitching Die of the Month for January 2023. Now, I have all of these prepped because I'm going on vacation and I want to take these with me so I can do some stitching on the go. But I do the same thing for planning out what I'm going to do in my craft room. You'll see that with the die cuts later in this video. Now, first is a small zipper bag here that has all the supplies that I use for stitching on the go. I have my reading glasses, I have some tape, I have some needles, I'll link to the ones I use below, and I have some folding scissors. So this small zipper bag is what I'll put my stitching in and take on the go. Sometimes that's just to the sofa upstairs while I watch a movie, or to my son's baseball game, or vacation, anything. But it's nice to have a bag that I can quickly grab whenever I want. Now in there, you saw there was a pocket with a card with some stitching on it. I have lots of those pockets in the bigger bag that are all prepped and ready for when I want to craft. So there you can see I have in that little pocket, I have some thread and I have my stitching that's in progress. So that bigger bag there, these are Simon Says Stamp zipper bags. I love these for organizing my projects. I've shown that in videos before. In here, you can see I have lots of pockets with stitching projects planned out. So in it, I have my die cut pieces and the thread that I want to use with it. So when I'm ready to stitch a project, I just grab that along with my smaller kit bag and I'm ready to go. So these are Hero Arts storage pockets. I'm finding that I really like these when I'm planning small projects like this. They do have a larger size pocket available. You could also use a small Ziploc bag. I used to use those like the ones you see here on the left, but I found that they didn't hold up over time and I like to be able to reuse them. That is a good option. I'll link to those Ziploc bags below. But the ones that I use now are these storage pockets that have a nice tuck-in flap so it stays secure. So in this little pocket, I have my stitched panels that are die cut using those Spellbinders Stitching Die of the Month. You can see there are 3 white pieces here. All the holes are cut from it. And then also in that pocket, I have the colors of thread that I'll use to stitch with it. Whenever I do stitching on cardstock that I've cut with Spellbinders stitching dies, I like to use DMC 6-ply floss. It comes like you see over there on the right with the red. But what I do is I take that floss off and I put it around a bobbin. That's the white pieces here. I'll link to the bobbins I use below. They're really inexpensive. I like to put the label inside, tuck it inside the thread so I know if I run out of that color what I need to purchase, but you can also just write it on the bobbin itself. In here, I also have some metallic thread. Now this is only 1 ply. I'll show you how I make it thicker a little later in this video. But this is from the DMC metallic thread spool that you see over on the right. I just take some of that off and put it onto a bobbin. And that way I have that ready in my little pouch and I can save the rest of that metallic thread for another project. So I have these little bobbins here that I tuck in the pocket along with the die cut panels. And that is a project ready to go. I just have my little kit that I showed you earlier with my reading glasses, tape, and needle and scissors. I put this in with it, and that's what I take to stitch on the go. And here you can see I have lots of pockets ready. Now, I put a bunch of these together because I will be traveling, but I do this often. I will put lots of pockets together, often with different stitched panels from Spellbinders dies. And that way, whenever I have a chance to do some stitching, I have it ready to go. The same works with other kind of projects. Say you want to do some coloring on the go. You could have your little pouch with whatever coloring medium you like, maybe Copic markers. And then you can have little pockets with different pre-stamped images that you can color. So then anytime you have a chance to color on the go, or even somewhere different in your house, or you just have a few minutes, you grab that little pocket with the pre-stamped images, grab your markers, and there's no thinking involved. You can make good use of your time. And that's really what this is all about. It may seem like it took a lot of time for me to put this together, but in the end, it will save me a lot of time because it's all ready to go. Now I'll put all of these pockets into that large zipper bag, and I can take that with me or keep it in my craft room. If I have a project that has full sheets of cardstock or bigger stamp sets, I'll just use that large zipper bag alone and keep projects in that, which I've shown before in videos. Usually I'll keep these on my project cart from We Are Memory Keepers. I'll link to a video here up on the top right where I show more about that. All right, so here is one of my projects that I had in this little pocket, and I took that off and I did my stitching, and now it's complete. So it's safe and sound in that pocket, and now it's ready to bring to my craft room and glue together, add a greeting, and I'm good to go. So I like that I can stay more organized this way, plan out what I want to craft, and then I end up using my products more. I find if I do this as soon as I get new products in, then I'm more likely to really get my money's worth from it. Now, before I show you more organization, let's do a little bit of stitching. If you want to skip the stitching part, you can move ahead in the video. I'm just going to show a little bit of the stitching. Please know I have a video with much more detail up here on the top right that you can check out if you're interested. Now, this is one of the projects I had in one of those pockets. I'm taking a piece of the 6-ply floss. It has 6 little threads together, and I'm pulling out 4 of them. I'm going to actually show you 2 different ways to do this. This first way, I pull out 4 of the 6 threads. I just grab one of the threads and pull the rest away with my fingers. Now, when I stitch these Spellbinder die cuts, I like to use 4-ply of floss. So that's why I took the 6 and just cut it down to 4. You could do more if you want a fuller stitch look, or less if you want a more open look. Now I'm threading this onto my needle. When I thread onto the needle, I like to just fold those 4 threads kind of in a little spot here at the end, just to make a little loop. That's easier to feed the loop through the eye of the needle than it is to put all 4 ends through it. I then pull it through and I end up having 1 long tail and 1 short tail. So again, this is 4 threads. So when we stitch with this, it'll have a nice look to it. All right, now there are many ways to start and end your stitching. I prefer to use a piece of tape to tape the ends of my threads. You can tie knots, you can tuck it under stitching you've already done. There are so many ways to do it, but I found that this is what works best when you stitch on paper. So you go up from the back to the front, and now I'm going from the front to the back. The nice thing about the Spellbinders stitching dies is that they kind of emboss little lines that show you where to stitch. So you know which holes to connect with your stitching, which makes it so much easier. I think you can kind of see those embossed lines there. Now you could do all of the stitching in one color. I like to change it up. So here you'll see I'm doing part of this corner with this color thread, and then I'll switch for the others. It does take a little bit more time if you switch colors here and there. However, I don't find that these stitch panels take that long because the design's already done for you and it's pretty spaced out. If you want to save time, definitely just do 1 or 2 colors. So I'm at the end of this floss, so I will just flip it over, pull that floss kind of off to a blank area, and use a piece of tape to tape it off. Again, there are other ways to do this, but I find this gives the best results. Here I'm just using a piece of double-sided tape. That's another option. I just won't remove the release paper. Usually I use Scotch tape, but I ran out and I'm waiting for more to come in the mail. All right, now I'm switching to white floss for some of the other stitching. This is another way you can prepare your floss. It will again give you 4-ply for your stitching. In this case, I'm only taking 2 of the plies out, so I have 2 threads here. I will then feed it through the eye of the needle as I did before, I kind of fold my threads. So I have a little loop and I just push that little loop through the eye and pull it through. Now this time I won't have a short tail and a long tail. I'm taking all of the ends of that floss and meeting them up together. So my needle will be looped onto it. So the 4 ends meet on the other, and we have 4-ply this way. So you can do it either this way or the way I just showed you, but both give you a nice 4-ply option for the stitching. So here I'm taping the end, and I will continue to stitch with this. The nice thing about taking 2-ply of floss and folding it over like I did here is that your needle won't fall off. If you are stitching on the go, this is a great option because you don't have to worry about your needle falling off and losing it. It's looped on there, so it won't get lost. And when I'm done, I'll just finish it like I did before and tape it on the back. Now this time I'm using the metallic thread. As I mentioned before, this metallic thread is just 1-ply. It's one single thread. And I don't like to cut 4 pieces and stitch with 4 because it's kind of moody. It kind of gives you a little trouble if you have 4-ply. You can definitely do it. I just find it a little bit difficult to use. So I just take one long string and then I fold it over the needle to meet the 2 ends together. And again, my needle is looped on. It won't fall off. So I've met the 2 ends up. Now I will stitch with this. Note that this is stitching with only 2-ply. I want it to be 4. So what I'll do is stitch each stitch twice. I'll do it once, and then I'll stitch again right on top of it, which will give me that 4-ply look. So let me show you. Again, this is just 2-ply. It was 1 thread I folded over. And I will create a stitch with it. Then I will create another stitch right on top of it. You can kind of see how the metallic thread kind of gets a little difficult to work with. So it's very helpful to just have one folded over and your needle stays on it. So there you saw me do 2 stitches right on top of each other, which gives me that 4-ply look, which matches nicely with all the other stitching I've done. But again, you can do less or more plies. It depends on what look you like. I just find with most of the Spellbinders stitching dies, 4-ply usually looks the best. I'm going to save the rest of this stitching for later, so I'll put the cardstock and the thread back into the pocket and then put all of this into that little zipper bag that has the other supplies, and it'll be ready to go when I'm ready to stitch again. Let's create a card with something that I've already stitched, just so I can show you how to glue these panels together. I get a lot of questions about this, and I thought I would mention 2 options. I like to use a strong liquid adhesive, usually Gina K Connect liquid adhesive in the fine tip bottle. I put adhesive around the outside edge where the cardstock is. Then I put some adhesive on some of the stitching on the back so I can be sure it doesn't come undone. I try to avoid putting the glue near where the holes are because I don't want it to squeeze out to the front. You can see the back of my panel is a hot mess. It doesn't matter. No one's going to see it. I will then place this onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch note card. And then, this is important, put something very heavy on it. Make sure that you have good contact, especially around the edges, so that all of that stays put on the front of your card. I like to put paperweights on it, but you could use something heavy. Even your die cut machine, just press it firmly for good connection. Now here I have additional die cuts of this kind of star shape that I'm gluing on the back of our stitched star shape. That way it has some dimension, but you could obviously just glue this directly to the center of the card. Notice again, I'm going on the outside edges, over some of the stitching, and in the center. I will then glue all of that to the center of our card and put something heavy on it while it dries. I also stamped Stitched with Love with black ink onto the center white die cut. Now that Stitched with Love is from that stamp set I showed you earlier, and the white die cut is included in the stitching die set. If you aren't into stitching, you could still use these dies just to have a fun pattern in the background. The holes that it creates is such a fun pattern, so you don't have to stitch if you don't want to. And that's another way you can use these dies creatively. I did add some white pearls to the stitching, but other than that, it's just cardstock, stitching, and a little bit of stamping. Now let's do another card using the same die set, but with a different look. This time I used colored cardstock. And I thought I'd show you another option for gluing your stitch panels onto your cards, and that is to use a strong double-sided tape. Here I'm using Lawn Fawn 1/8 of an inch narrow double-sided tape and putting it around the outside edge. I also like to put several pieces on the inside. Again, I avoid the little openings for the stitching holes because I don't want that adhesive to show through. So I just put pieces kind of crossing over the background just to make sure that everything stays secure. Now my panel and my card are the same size, 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. Here's a trick to getting them lined up just right. I use the corner of my stamping tool. So I'll actually put my panel in with all the adhesive facing up, and I'll put it right in the corner. Then I take my note card and put that in the corner too and press down. That way I can be sure it's lined up nicely. You want to really make sure you secure that edge where you have adhesive. So I like to run a bone folder along this. Now I find this holds very well, but I do prefer the liquid adhesive option because I know that if I put something heavy on it while it dries, it will stay connected around all of the edges. But it's nice to have the different options. Here I'm using the tape and I'm just kind of going from corner to corner on this. I do get some of this tape behind the open holes, but not much, so I'm not too worried about it. Then I can place this directly at the center of our card. This time I didn't put dimension behind it. It really doesn't matter, totally up to you. On that last one, since all of the background was white, I chose to use a little extra dimension. And on this one, I put an extra liquid adhesive on the back too, just to make sure it stays put. At the center of this card, I'm adding a flower. I'll talk more about these die cuts and organizing with them in a little bit here. This is the Spellbinders Large Die of the Month for January 2023. And I die cut some from matching colors, and I'm just gluing 3 leaves and 1 flower right at the center of the stitching. So this is another way you can use your stitch dies, is to combine them with die cuts that you may have. That gives you more life for both products. The sentiment on this is from a discontinued stamp set from My Favorite Things. I stamped it with black ink on a white cardstock strip. I'm putting 2 small foam squares on the ends of the sentiment. Then I will put liquid adhesive on those little foam squares and along all of the back of the sentiment. I will place this over the flower in the center. Because this is laying over the flower, the ends have the foam tape behind it to give it a little dimension so it's all even. And I can be sure that that liquid adhesive will hold it all in place. The liquid adhesive also gives you time to wiggle it to get it in just the right position. I did finish this off by adding little pearls here and there. I like that look, but you could definitely skip it or even do French knots with the thread if you prefer. Now I know not everyone is into stitching on cards. I completely understand it. I'll do some die cutting here in a moment, but I know many of you have tried it and find it very therapeutic as I do, so I wanted to be sure to share these examples. And I have one more. This one I did a bold navy cardstock with some blue and silver stitching. I also added some silver gemstones and a white heat embossed thank you from the stamp set that I showed you earlier in this video. You can also see this die creates little kind of faux stitch lines in the background, which really add a lot of interest. But remember, you can use these different stitching pieces separately, like that star in the center you could use alone, or the background you could use alone. There is also a circle that you can stitch for the center that I haven't even used yet. Okay, now let's talk about doing some card planning with die cutting. I really like to make sure I get the most use out of any die sets that I get, especially my favorite ones. And I get a lot of questions about this. I have the Spellbinders Large Die of the Month for January 2023. I've already used it. I'm going to use it a lot more here. Off screen, I have die cut it from lots of different colors of cardstock, and I have all of those different colors in different pockets. I'm using the same Hero Arts pockets, but you could use Ziploc bags, whatever you want. I have them in the pockets for storage until I'm ready, and then when I start creating, I'll move the different die cuts into little trays like the ones you see here. You've seen me use those a lot in videos. Now, it did take time to do all of this die cutting. However, if I take the time to do that, especially when I'm not feeling very creative, It'll be ready for when I am ready to create, when I am feeling creative. And I will be certain to use it. If I take the time to die cut it, I know I will use these die cuts. And that way, I know I will use the products I have. Now, I am going to make a bunch of cards with these, and I'm going to show you how I plan what I'm going to do with them. I have all of my die cutting done. The first thing I'll do is assemble one of each of the different flower options I have here. Or if you have maybe a bird die set, assemble one of the birds, just so I know what I have to work with. And then I can create a few different card designs. Now with this particular die set, I like that there are some larger images and some smaller images. I know some folks don't like to use small images or have trouble using them. I totally understand that. Thankfully, there are lots of different options out there. You could definitely do this same like pre-planning of your cards with bigger dies too. I like to use these little die cuts. It's something I enjoy, but I definitely suggest you use whatever you enjoy using, whatever works for you. So here I have a few different flowers arranged using the different die cuts. Now there is one little flower over here that doesn't have a layering image, so I faked it. I took two of the die cuts and glued them together offset to make it look layered. That's the one that I'm doing here. So I'm taking two of the same die cuts, and gluing them together offset, and it'll make it look like it's layered. The die cut in the back is darker than the die cut in the front, and it gives you a different look. I mentioned earlier I like using Spellbinders products because I feel they have a good value and good quality and really great designs. I also like that they have such detailed options, such as this little branch here. You can put these little die cuts on it. I just love how well thought out they are. So you have the bigger flower options and the smaller flower options, and you can use them together or separately. So now that I have all of my layered, assembled example flowers here, I will go off screen and glue a bunch of other flowers together in the same way. I have all the die cuts done. I can glue them all together and have them ready when I'm ready to create again. But next, I'm going to come up with a few different card designs using some of these die cuts. Once I come up with the card design, I have all of my flowers ready, and I can create the same design but in different color combinations and change things up. Now on this one, I thought I'd use the embossing folders for the background. There are 2 embossing folder clubs where you subscribe and you get a different embossing folder each month. There's the 2D embossing folder, the original one, and now they have the 3D embossing folder. And you can tell the difference often because the 3D embossing folder is usually thicker. That's one way to tell it. The 2D has raised areas and flat areas. The 3D one has raised and flat and everything in between to give you a really full 3D look. I like to spritz my cardstock with a little bit of water before putting it into either of the embossing folders. This just helps to give a nice impression on your cardstock, but not cause cracking. Now for using these folders, it's super easy because you just follow the instructions on your Spellbinders Platinum, or you follow the instructions with whatever machine you have. With the regular embossing folder, you just follow the instructions for using a regular embossing folder. So after I run that through, you can see this beautiful pattern. My cardstock is still a little bit wet. It'll dry and it'll be beautiful. Now here's the 3D embossing folder. Again, I like that the Spellbinders folders are big, so you can kind of position your cardstock wherever you want, or make a bigger panel if you prefer. I will follow the instructions for using a 3D embossing folder. It'll work with whatever die cut machine you have. And this will give me another embossed background that has even more dimension to it. So let's look at a comparison between the two. On the left, you have the original embossing folder, the kind of 2D embossing folder, and on the right is the 3D. You can see the difference between both. Both are beautiful. And I will do several backgrounds like this with these embossing folders and have those ready for our card design. So I took one of the white backgrounds and I have added it to a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white note card. And now I'm assembling my flowers. I like to start with a large flower in the middle and put one big foam dot behind the center of it. I only put it behind the center so that I can tuck other flowers behind it. Now all of these I will use liquid adhesive. That way I can wiggle it around and move it until I'm happy with the placement and I let it dry. So I will just tuck these in real tight together, make sure I have a good variety of color, but really I'm just going for kind of an arrangement here. Once I have an arrangement or a card design planned, I can repeat this card with different color backgrounds, different embossing folder backgrounds, and different color flowers. Remember, I have a bunch of these flowers already assembled, so it won't take much time to do. Now, I know not everyone likes to craft like this, where you kind of create a bunch of pieces and then assemble a bunch of cards. I know that isn't for everyone, but I often hear questions of how to really use your supplies to get your money's worth and how to create when your mojo is gone. This is great for when your mojo is gone. I'm going to come up with this card design, and next time I'm stuck and not sure what to do in my craft room, I will just do this card design with the die cuts I have ready, and that will get me going. Oftentimes, the best way to work through lost mojo is to just create your way through it. And you create with something that you've already designed in the past or something you're very comfortable with. That'll get those juices going, and then you'll be off to the races. All right, so I am just arranging these little flowers however I want, and this will be like my design that I'll go back to several times. I'll take a photo of it so that I can remember it. I'll be honest, I like to keep card designs like this one that could be used for a variety of occasions. I like to keep a few of these on hand with no sentiment on it. So whenever I'm in a pickle and I need a card right away, I can just add a sentiment to it and I'm good to go. But for this example, I'm using the dies that are in this regular die of the month for January 2023. And look at what the dies do. It kind of engraves the word happy birthday. There's some other sentiments there too. And it's just a fun alternative to like a bold stamped or die cut image. It's very subtle and beautiful against these flowers. You could put your sentiment anywhere, but I like to put it at the focal point of the card, which is the center of those flowers. Because I'm putting the sentiment on top of all of those dimensional die cuts, I am layering 3 of these sentiment strips together. That way it's strong. And when this goes through the mail, it won't get crunched up by all the die cuts behind it. I will then use foam squares over on one edge because there's not much dimension on that side. And then I will put liquid adhesive over all of it. This is kind of like what I did before. And then place that right on top of my bouquet. Again, I get sometimes people saying, why do you put your sentiment on top of whatever you just created? I just like it in the focal point. So this is my first design I've come up with using all of the die cuts that I've created. I'll take a picture of it so that I can remember it and still send this card out to someone. Because I have little die cuts hanging off the edge, I will put this in a slightly bigger envelope. I like to use an A6 envelope if I have die cuts hanging off. I'll link to the A6 envelopes below, but you could always trim those off the edge and put it in a regular A4 or A2 envelope. Now I did add some pearls, and I just love all the texture these dies create and the texture the embossing folder created on our background. So I can change up the colors of this, but I've got the design figured out, that arrangement figured out, and I can make more cards like this. Okay, now it's time for a second card design using those die cuts. Again, I like to really make the most of the supplies I have, especially die sets like this that I love so much. So this has a very different feel than our last card, but it uses those same die cuts that I've created. Let's talk about the die cut sentiment on here, because this is another way that I organize and plan. Now this is the Spellbinders Layered Mix and Match Sentiment die set. It's one of my absolute favorite sentiment die sets from the year. I've used it many times in videos. It has all the words you see here and the shadow dies included in the set, plus those little flowers. In fact, I like this die set so much that I bought a bunch of them because I was mass producing them for a project, and Spellbinders has huge sales where I was able to get the sets for like $8. In fact, I think it's on big time sale right now. So I bought several of them because I mass produced, but you definitely don't need to do that. I just wanted to explain why I have so many. Now, I off screen have cut my favorites of those sentiments several times, many times, as you can see, from white and black cardstock. I have all of these die cuts ready and in a pocket, like I've used many times in this video. I will take this and a little jar of Gina K Connect liquid adhesive. And I take this in front of a movie on the sofa or on vacation. I'm taking these with me on vacation. And I glue them together for a nice stacked look. That way, when I create a card, I will have sentiments ready, stacked with dimension and ready to add to my card. So if you have a favorite sentiment die set or stamp set, go ahead and die cut a bunch or stamp a bunch and have them ready to go. This is a great project to do when you're lacking creativity. Once again, get some of those done so that when you're ready to create, you'll have them ready and be able to create faster. So for this card, I have my die cuts ready. Remember, we have those from before. So I chose the purple ones and I assembled some off screen, as I told you I was going to go do. And then I had my hello die cut from this pocket. And so I could pull this design together quickly. And I'll be able to make more of these very quickly in different color combinations with a completely different look. Now for the center of these particular flowers, I did use silver glitter cardstock, so it's got a little bit of sparkle. For the little sentiment underneath it, I used the Simon Says stamp friend greeting. I really like the sending happy thoughts, and I do plan to stamp a bunch of those sentiment strips off screen, so those are ready to go on future cards too. I've mentioned many times in past videos that I have sentiments ready to go, some of my favorites, and people ask, like, where do I store those? Where do I store my extra die cuts? I keep them in the pockets like I've showed you today, and I just have those in a container in my craft room, and it's working out really well for me. I find I can better organize them and put them to use on cards like I've done here. Now on this one, I did trim my background down and added it to a white note card that's 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And I added some silver gemstones in the background for a little bit of sparkle. Then we have that mix and match hello. You can see it's black hello with the white shadow die cut and the stamp sentiment below it. I really like this design and that I can change up the colors using all the die cuts I had created earlier and make a card that is suited for the recipient. So this one's definitely going to my friend Libby, who loves purple. Okay, I have one more design for you, and I really like this one. I'll explain why in a moment, but it uses all of the products that I've shown you, but in a completely different look. So I have the regular embossing folder I used on the background, and there in the center I have the large die of the month and the regular die of the month. The regular die of the month has that large and sign, which I used gold cardstock for. What's fun about that die cut is you can put any two sentiments above and below it, and it creates it something fun and different. So I have I just adore you and you're in my heart. You could do happy birthday and many more, but it's a fun way to put two different sentiments together. And I gold heat emboss those sentiments using an older Altenew stamp set that I use often, as you can tell. Now, the die cuts there are some of the die cuts I had ready to go from all of that die cutting I did earlier in this video. So this is a fun design because I can change the sentiments I put with it to make it any occasion that I want. Just put a sentiment on the top and on the bottom. Can change up the colors. I have lots of die cuts ready to go. Or I could use other die cuts. I could put balloons on there. I could put stars, leaves, whatever you want. So sometimes when you're feeling really creative, it's good to come up with card designs that you can use when you're feeling less creative. This video is really about making the most of the supplies you have, making sure you put them to good use, and making most of the time you spend crafting. Now, I know I do a lot of die cutting and a lot of cards. I'm not suggesting that that you need to do that. You could just do a little bit of die cutting. You could have 4 or 5 sentiments die cut and ready to go, or stamped and ready to go. It's all about doing what works for you and making sure that you are using the supplies you have, making good use of your time, and really loving it. So I'm hoping that this video just inspires you to kind of think about what planning you can do in the new year to make better use of your crafting time and your crafting supplies. I hope it was helpful. Longer video, sorry it's so long. And if you're interested in any of the supplies that I use, I do link below in the YouTube description. I will also link to a couple related videos here at the end. I really pray you all have a wonderful 2023 and that you find a lot of time to do crafting. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.